Hey, what's up? The core of this update is brutally pragmatic. It's all about reducing crashes, ironing out crossplay headaches, and squeezing a bit more stability and performance out of the game, so your sessions don't get cut short by the game closing on you or freezing at the worst possible moment. News outlets picked up a short bulletin summarizing the changes and flagged the main crash and performance fixes right away. You'll see references to a freeze that could hit PlayStation 5 sessions, a host-side crash on Xbox, and several cross-play-related stability tweaks that target the weird edge cases that crop up when different platforms try to play together. The studio behind the title, Larian Studios, has been rolling out hotfixes and larger patches since the major final patch dropped last year, and they've been iterating on multiplayer and platform compatibility ever since. And their official channels and support pages are usually the place for detailed notes if you really want to dig into what's changing. One of the clearest patterns here is that cross-platform play tends to surface problems that single-platform testing misses. Different input stacks, differing memory profiles, and the way one platform handles streaming or controller disconnections can create a cascade that brings the game down. This update specifically calls out cross-play edge case fixes and several platform-specific crash repairs, including mentions of Steam Deck behavior during multiplayer sessions, which suggests targeted tweaks for the native Steam Deck build. For players who use Steam Deck in native mode and link up with friends on PC or console, the update reportedly addresses a few of the crashes that appeared when the deck was hosting or participating in crossplay sessions. And community discussions have been full of reports describing repeated crashes in certain poor rendering situations and while navigating complex geometry, so the fix is aimed squarely at those exact symptoms. There's also a short, important list of quality of life improvements tucked into the wording of the release. Stability patches that aren't glamorous but do wonders for long sessions, and some gameplay performance improvements that should smooth frame pacing and loading behavior in particularly heavy scenes. Those kinds of changes don't always produce a fireworks moment, but they cut down on that slow, annoying drift toward instability that can ruin a multiplayer night or a long single-player playthrough. It's worth stressing that a lot of these fixes are surgical. They're responding to specific crash paths like controller input handling on consoles, party management freezes, or texture and memory edge cases that pop up on different GPUs. And that explains why the patch notes read like a list of "fix this crash" and "fix this freeze" rather than anything flashy. The developers have been careful to target the things that cause the game to stop functioning, rather than tinkering with balance or adding new systems, at least in this release. If you play across platforms, the crossplay work is probably the most consequential part of this update. Multiplayer is only as strong as the weakest link, and when one platform's client behaves unpredictably, it drags the whole session down. So these updates that address hosting crashes, client disconnects, and platform-specific freezes are the sort of background maintenance that makes group sessions actually playable without someone constantly having to reload or restart. From a technical perspective, the Steam Deck mentions are especially interesting because they hint at platform-specific renderer or memory tweaks. Things like switching up the default upscaling method, nudging VRAM usage down in corner cases, or preventing controller state corruption when switching modes. Those changes don't always show up as big visual differences, but they matter hugely for folks trying to keep sessions stable on a handheld system that has much tighter resource limits than most desktop PCs. For console players, the notes flag a freeze on PlayStation 5 and a crash on Xbox, both of which can be frustrating because they often happen during very specific actions, accessing menus, pressing certain buttons, or running into rare situations with party management. Because those platform issues are often tied to system firmware and controller APIs, the fixes likely touch the game's input handling and state-saving code to be more defensive when console's environment behaves unexpectedly. That kind of defensive coding is what converts an occasional crash into a near-invisible hiccup. One other thing that stands out is the way this hotfix fits into the larger pattern of post-major patch support. Short, focused releases that prioritize playability and multiplayer reliability. They might not make headlines like a new subclass or a new feature, but if you've been bitten by sudden crashes or mid-session disconnects, this update will likely feel like a relief because it addresses the core problems rather than surface polish. For anyone streaming or recording sessions, less crashing means fewer awkward cuts and more time actually showing the game rather than scrambling to get back in. Overall, this patch is a focused piece of maintenance. Crash fixes for consoles, cross-play stability improvements, Steam Deck native build tweaks, and general performance and stability upgrades. These are the kinds of changes that don't always feel exciting at first glance, but they quietly improve the experience for people grinding through long sessions, playing cooperatively with friends, or just trying to enjoy the story without technical interruptions.